118, right? Right, we just gotten into the Nevi'im. Okay? So Rebbe is explaining the inyan of Shtus de Kedusha, a level beyond intellect.
Right?
Yeah, right. Well, no. In the book you're in Basi. Go to the front of the book.
Oh.
It's going to be page Ches in the book, because you've got a different book. Their copy is from the Friedrich Rebbe's Maamer. You're looking at the book called Maamer Basi L'Gani. So it's the first Maamer in that book. What's on page 118? Probably exciting stuff. Let's see. 118 is the middle of Tafshin Yud Tes. Okay, that was a good year. 1959. Okay. After learning about Shtus de Klipa in the third chapter, Ein Adam Ever Avera Elim Kein Nichnes by Ruach Shtus, a person doesn't do an Avera unless they're overcome by a temporary state of insanity, that they lose sight of the fact that this event will separate them from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they don't want to be separate. Then, in Daled, Rebbe explained to us that the separation between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jew, when the Jew is involved in behavior that is unhealthy, is only mitzad the midas of the Nefesh Elokis, the emotional attributes of the Nefesh Elokis, and not the essence of the Nefesh Elokis. The essence of the Nefesh Elokis is connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu essentially and cannot be changed. I'm afraid to ask, but what mashal did we bring to help us understand such a thing? A mashal in you? And I also have it.
That we can't be
something that can't be changed, no matter how much the external and revealed reality might be different. So the essential reality is what it is. DNA, right? Guy with DNA for black hair can dye his hair blonde for 60 years. Doesn't change his DNA. Ki who's that? Right? His DNA is still black hair. Right? He has blonde hair. No one knows. Only his hairdresser knows for sure that he doesn't have black hair. Right? That was an old line from way back. Shmuel, you heard that line? You didn't react. Oh, you see, okay. You had never heard that line before? No, come on.
Tell me about a guy dyeing his hair.
No, only her. They just men didn't dye their hair in the old days. Men were men, women were women. You know, it was a different world. But so when they talked about dyeing hair, they talked about women, and only her hairdresser knows for sure.
Oh.
Right? That was. So why does the hairdresser know? Because if you dye it once, it doesn't work. Because what do you have to keep doing? You have to keep dyeing it. Because what's it going to do? It's going to keep growing. And what are the roots going to be? Black. Why? Because the DNA is black. That's the person's hair. And what they do in revealed reality has nothing to do with that essential reality. That's very interesting. Right? Why the Abishah created that way? Who knows? Maybe the Abishah created that way so you and I would have a mushal for the connection of the essence of the soul to the essence of God. Nothing that we do in this world can make that connection stronger, and nothing that we do can make that connection deeper. If a person dyes his hair black all day with his black DNA, that doesn't change his DNA. It doesn't become more black hair DNA. Right? What he does in revealed reality doesn't affect essential reality, but it affects revealed reality. Right? Okay. And what is that? So we saw in the fourth chapter, that's the midas of the nefesh elokis, the emotional attributes of the godly soul. That's what's affected by our action. And the mashal was a rope, right? That's what we learned in the first half of the that's what we learned in Dalet, the rope. And if chas v'shalom someone cuts the rope, so he's very sensitive to that. So those are the averas that most people who have any sensitivity whatsoever to their relationship with God don't do. They don't get into cars on Shabbos. Right? Why? It's obvious that that's going to disconnect me from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. I'm giving a Kadosh Baruch Hu a bill of divorce if I get into a car on Shabbos. Okay. Whereas certain things that might be less severe, little nicks in the rope that has 613 strands, little nicks in the rope of the neshama, I might not be sensitive to it. Okay. That's what the Rebbe explained to us in 4 and 5, in 3 and 4. In chapter 5, the Rebbe is explaining the inyan of Shtus de Kedusha. Right? Why? Why are we trying to understand this, Bichlal? How did this all start in the beginning of chapter 3? What did we talk about in the very, very beginning of chapter 3? It's not written on my face. It's written in the Maamer. Only one person I know ever saw Torah written on someone's face. My chavrusa and roommate, when he was 15 years old, went into Chassidus with his father to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe asked him what he's learning. He was learning in a very academic, modern, Orthodox school in Manhattan called Ramaz. Right? That's what he was learning. And it's very academic. I mean, they learn things. They learn everything. But they learn it. I mean, they're serious about it. So the Rebbe asked what Gemara, what is he learning? He said Gemara. What Gemara? Bab Metzia. So he said, which chapter? Chapter 3. So the Rebbe said, do you remember it? So you don't want to say yes, no. So the Rebbe said, why don't you say over the beginning of the 3rd chapter now, so your father will hear how much you're learning and get a lot of nachas. Now, he told me this story. I can, he could be making it all up, but I assume he isn't, because where in the world would he get such a story? He said he looked at the Rebbe's face, and it was as if superimposed on the Rebbe's face was the first page of Bab Metzia, and he's sort of looking at the Rebbe and just reading Bab Metzia. Read the Mishnah, read the first sugya. Then the Rebbe smiled, said, you gave your father a lot of nachas. You go outside and wait while I talk to your father. That was his experience with the Rebbe when he was 15 years old. So, but the place to look is on the page, not in someone's face. How do we get to Shtus? Beginning of 3rd chapter was the first thing we mentioned in the beginning of 3rd. No one looked while I was busy telling this story. No one bothered to look. Thought you'd see it on my face. I am not the Lubavitcher Rebbe in any way, shape, or form. Atze Shittim, b'diuk. The Mishkan was made from Shittim wood, right? Which is some type of cedar. The Mishkan was made from Shittim wood, and that Shittim wood is from the root Shtus, folly, idiocy. Well, it doesn't have to be folly and idiocy. It can be a level below Tam Vadas, below intellect. That's what we learned about in chapter 3 and 4. It can also be a level above Tam Vadas. That's what we started learning in 5. Right? And what's that level beyond Tam Vadas? Was the mashal of Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak dancing in a seemingly irrational way at the chasnas of the kalas of the city where he lived in Bavel. Right? And Rav Zera wasn't so happy, but when Rav Zera saw the miracle that happened, the pillar of fire that separated Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak from everybody else at his levaya, so at his funeral, so then he realized that it was in the merit of his actions at the wedding. Okay. Seder? David HaMelech, one of the last things we saw yesterday. David HaMelech says what? Ani bar v'lo eida bahamas sa'is imach v'ni tamid imach. I'm a boor, I'm a behema. Right? I don't know anything. And I'm always with you. The always with you seems rather contradictory to the first 3 parts. And what does David HaMelech say? Why am I always with you? Because I don't work on a level of intellect. Because I'll be intellect, there'll be places where you aren't. Intellect can't get to those places. Right? So in that sense, if my relationship with the Kadosh Baruch is only intellectual, there'll be times when I'm not always with you. There'll be times when I'm not with you. Why am I always with you? Because I can transcend intellect and even be with you in a place that doesn't make sense, so to speak. All right? I mean, we're about to celebrate, if that's the right word, commemorate Tisha B'Av. All right, makes sense. We've been in Gullus for 2,000 years. Might that create a situation where a person comes to the intellectual conclusion that is chas v'shalom wrong and off the mark? Could be. Right? Might a person see certain events in Jewish history and see that there can't be a God if this happens? Well, people who came to that conclusion. In order to be able to deal with that place in reality and still see the Eibishter, you have to get beyond intellect. Because intellect can't explain God in that place. It's not there, I'll be intellect. It's not there. What is there? Who knows? Right? But he's not. Because he's on a higher level than that. It's beyond that. Well, how do you stay with him even there? A level beyond us. So that's what David HaMelech said. And then what we had just started at the end of last year was the union of the nevuah. What's nevuah? Prophecy. What's prophecy? being privy to information that I won't necessarily be able to access through intellect, right? If I could access all of this information through intellect, then I wouldn't really need prophecy. We'd all figure it out. Now, there are aspects of the prophecy that we could figure out, right? Part of the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu was don't murder. Well, most societies figured that out. That doesn't mean they live by it. Either they do or they don't, but everybody has a law in the books, don't murder. Everybody has a law in the books, don't steal. Right? Why? Well, this makes sense. Okay, so there's things called mishpatim, which are laws that resonate in human intellect. And even if the Eibusher didn't tell us not to do those things, then we probably would have figured that out by ourselves. Okay, meaning but the fact that Nevuah is the source of our understanding of the fact that we shouldn't steal and we shouldn't murder means that those prohibitions are coming from a place far beyond intellect. And if you think that the reason that God said don't murder is the same reason that you understand why murder is not a good idea, that's a rather silly conclusion to come to. Because why would I ever think that infinite and beyond infinite intellect thinks the same way finite human intellect thinks? Right? You can explain something to a 3-year-old child in a way that the 3-year-old child can understand it, but that isn't how the adult understands it. He just explains it that way to the 3-year-old child, so it'll make sense to the 3-year-old child's understanding of reality. But is that how the adult appreciates it? No, much more sophisticated. So there you're talking about two states of finite reality, because that child's going to grow into an adult and have the same understanding the adult has. The Eibusher? Why did the Eibusher say don't murder? I don't know. Why? Why would we think murder is a bad idea? That I know very well. It's perfectly reasonable. Can't live that way. Right? Don't steal. I don't want to have to lock everything up. Right? Okay. South Africa, when the first thing they taught me, I rented a car when I was there. Right? First thing they taught me two things about driving. First of all, when you go out of the driveway, you go backwards. You back out of the driveway. You never go out of the driveway frontwards. Go back. Why? So if there's someone on the street who might want to rob you or kill you, you can zip back into the gated driveway very quickly. Backing in might be hard when you're under pressure. It's the first thing they taught. The second thing is you don't stop at red lights at night.
Huh?
You don't stop at red lights at night. You pull up to the red light, look, and drive. You do not sit there. Rule of driving. Why? Well, who wants to live like that? Okay, so I understand why I don't, stealing and killing. I mean, I understand why I don't want to live in a place like that. Okay. Is that why the Eibusher said don't do it? I don't know why the Eibusher said don't do it, because his intellect is infinite and mine isn't. Okay. But Nevuah in general takes us to a... Nevuah in general, this doesn't make me nervous anymore, right? Because I see myself and I figure I'm taking the pictures and I take crummy pictures, so I'm not worried about it. Right? I'm not taking the pictures. Nevuah takes us to a place that intellect can't. So what does the Navi have to do? So let's see. The Rebbe explained to us. What does the Navi have to do? Right? So we were in the second. Well, we got to the third line, but we'll start the second line. Right? Hafshatas Agashmi, the first two words on the second line of the page. Throwing off his physical reality. Vahainu, Hafshatas Hasechel Vamidos, to throw away, rid himself of, take off, so to speak, his own intellect and his own emotions. Why? He wants to be a kli for the Eibusher's idea. What does he have to empty himself out of? His own intellectual reality in order to allow God's reality in. Because his reality is limited, and he wants some level of understanding or reality, better than understanding because it's beyond understanding, even though it's going to come into his understanding, right? If he's Moshe Rabbeinu, it's going to be clear as a bell, and he doesn't even have to go through the whole process we're going to describe here relative to other Nevi'im. But relative to all the other Nevi'im, what did they have to do? Lose their seichel, lose their midas, and as we said yesterday, go into a state that was basically akin to an epileptic fit. They would lay on the floor and shake. No sense of self. No filters. V'liyos bebechinas bittul. They'd be in a state of nullification, l'mayla mitam v'das, beyond intellect. Dezeu gam kein inyan havshatas a levushim beis nevuah. We talked about this outside last time, and now we'll see it inside. They also used to take off their clothes when they experienced nevuah. Like it says, relative to Shaul HaMelech. But Yafshet gam hu es begodav, he also took off his clothes, v'yiz nabe, and he had nevuah. Shmuel Aleph, pasuk in Shmuel Aleph, describing the nevuah of Shaul HaMelech. The levushim, where did levushim come from? Him ba mitzad chet etzadas. Again, we talked about this outside yesterday, quickly at the end of the shiur. Levushim come, where did garments come from? The chet etzadas. Before chet etzadas, Adam and Chava walked around with no sense of self. Therefore, they weren't embarrassed by being unclothed. It was the first thing that says happened to them once they ate lunch. They became embarrassed. What does that mean? They became aware of self. Once they became aware of self, so then they needed clothing. Clothing comes from that awareness of self. So the Navi wants to get completely beyond that awareness of self, to be a kli, a vessel for the revelation of God's wisdom, throws off his garments. Wild. I'll bet you never knew that, right? Yeshayahu Navi is laying on the floor naked when all that stuff that we read about in Sefer Yeshaya happened. It's unbelievable. It's wild. It's just wild. This is not a middle-class religion. The Levushim...
Does the Navi remember what he said after, or someone has to transcribe it as it's going down?
Who's transcribing it?
So he remembers it afterwards.
Who can hear it? Someone sitting next to it? If the
maybe.
person sitting... Well, hold on, think about that for a second. If Amnon is experiencing nevuah, with his clothes on, we hope. Okay? Amnon's on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. He can do it with his clothes on. Amnon is experiencing nevuah. If I'm sitting next to him and I hear what he's hearing and I'm able to write it down, what am I experiencing? Nevuah.
Somebody's speaking.
But he like, isn't he like speaking in control?
Who says he's speaking? Who said anything about that? Why in the world? I don't understand. Where do you see anything here in the Rambam anywhere about
Because
nevuah?
if he's not his sense of self, he loses his whole sense of self. Then understandably, might be he's in like a fit and he won't remember what happened.
That's a separate issue. I'm just asking about the talking. Who said he's talking? I can't make things
Shaking
up.
on the
If I
ground.
make things
Shaking
up,
on the
I
ground
will
talking,
not come to a state of understanding of things.
Nevuah
Right?
is nifs time. It means literally moving the lips, no? Does it not?
Who's moving? Whose lips are moving,
He's in
so to
epileptic
speak?
shock and talking.
The Navi, no?
Why?
God speaks through his mouth, no?
He's not saying anything. He's laying there experiencing something. Then when he finishes, when he finishes, what does he do? Then he tells us what he experienced to the best of his ability, right? And he writes it down. It's called Sefer Yeshayahu. Or he doesn't write it down. He tells he tells the congregation in his shul, whatever he does, right? Well, but in the state of nevuah, no one's writing anything down, right? There's no one there, just him and God. I mean, there might be other people in the room, but they're not where he is.
I guess most prophets say after their nevuah, they say, Ko Amar Hashem, like this is what Hashem said.
And they use the word ko, which means this is like what Hashem said.
Right.
Only Moshe says zeh, this is what Hashem said. Right? Because their experience was in what's called the aspaklaria sheina me'ira, the unclear looking glass. I mean, it's somewhat misty to them. Moshe Rabbeinu saw the godly reality that was revealed to him as clearly as you and I see the physical reality on the table. Other prophets saw it in a misty, unclear way. So they use very, very difficult mashalim, very difficult parables to explain it to us. Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy is prose. Everybody else is poetry. Right? Poetry is harder to understand than prose. Moshe Rabbeinu, a 5-year-old, can understand his prophecy. Open up Yeshayahu Navi and see if you understand what he's talking about. It's very difficult. What?
Prose, what's that mean? Sorry.
The opposite of poetry. John said to Jim, "How are you? Will you go to the store and buy me an ice cream?" "No, I won't, because you're overweight and you have to lose weight." "You're not my mashpia. Just go to the store and buy some ice cream." "No, and ice cream's bad for your soul also. Do some iskafia, you lowlife." "Oh, that's prose." Okay, poetry is whatever. I can't make up a poem about that. It's yesterday they decided poetry has to rhyme, which is really, come on, guys. Poetry does not have to rhyme. If it doesn't rhyme, you're cooler and more sophisticated.
It doesn't make sense.
Right? And if no one can understand, it's even better. Right? No, don't say that about him.
Oh, sorry.
You ever read him?
I tried. It's weird.
It's weird.
For me, I'm not at that level. It's very hard to understand.
Aye. You should put an American flag on your chest here.
Oh,
I'm an American.
right here.
Shakespeare, he's weird.
Talk strange. Talk strange.
Aye, aye.
Would you like one?
Okay.
What?
Let's go.
American flag patch?
Sure. Make it happen.
With MAGA below it. Okay. So what does he do? He throws off his garments. Because garments came from Eitz Hadas. The Kedem Achet, fifth line. See, what does it say? V'yu shneim arumim. They were both lacking clothes. V'lo yizbei shasha, and they weren't embarrassed. Only afterwards did they become embarrassed. V'al yedei chet Eitz Hadas, and through the sin of the tree of knowledge, which we're going to now call chet Eitz Hadas, because that's what it's called. Nischadesh, it came into reality. Inyan alavusha, garments. V'yadua, the ikar achet, the essential chet. What happened? The Rebbe is not explaining how it happened, because how it happened is obviously very, very difficult. How can it be that two people who are completely sensitive to godliness could possibly do something that's against God's will? That's obviously a very, very difficult question. They didn't, so to speak, they did not have a Yetzer Hara. They got their Yetzer Hara from the Aveira. It's not that they had a Yetzer Hara, therefore did the Aveira, right? Okay. We've been explaining the Ruach Shtus coming from the Nefesh HaBahamis, and that's why a person might do something against the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How they did that, how the first one happened, is very hard to understand. Okay, that being said, it is extremely important to understand that event happened on the sixth day of creation. What does that mean? That means it's part of the creation of the world, not part of the history of the world. Right? When the Eibusher created the world, he created it in a way that there was a place called Gan Eden, and before the end of creation, so to speak, that place was destroyed. So the perfect world that the Eibusher wanted was the one after the Chet. That's the world that God looks at and says, very good, very good. Until the Chet, it was just good. After the Chet, very good. Now it's exactly what I want. It's perfectly imperfect for the people in it to perfect it successfully. That's it. I'm going to create a reality of darkness that's just the right amount of darkness for people to do avodah and illuminate it. Any more darkness, they drown in the darkness. Any less, it wouldn't be avodah. It's going to be just perfect. That's what Isaiah has. Just the right amount, right? People complain, Golus is this, Golus. Right? If only Mashiach would come, I could bring Mashiach. Right? If God would reveal himself, I could get it together and bring Mashiach. But God's hiding himself, so I can't get it together to bring Mashiach. I just want another smoothie. Right? With, what's that stuff you dip in the sushi? Right? Sushi and smoothies.
What?
And Starbucks coffee. With names you can't pronounce. Okay. By the way, where do we bring Mashiach? In Golus. You bring Mashiach from Golus. So obviously Golus, that state, which is ultimately a function of Chet Eitz Hadas in a certain way, right? That state is the state from which you can bring about the perfect reality. So we can't complain. There's no room for that complaint. The complaining just deflects us from what we're supposed to be doing, which is illuminating the world, which is what we've learned about in this whole Maamer. And the Rebbe told us so clearly how to do it. It's really quite astounding. So what was the chet? The ikar chet, a hergish ha'ma'urav v'teiv v'ra. The sensitivity that is a mixture of good and evil. Meaning the possibility of understanding the existence of something other than godly reality, called ra. What's teiv? Godliness. What's ra? The opposite thereof.
How can something be the opposite of godliness?
Because it's concealed. Kadosh Baruch Hu created the possibility of there being a reality called Ra. Now, he didn't create the Ra. He created a creature called humans who can do it. They're the only ones. Well, we talked about this yesterday at length, so I'm not going to go there. Right? The only creature that can do something against the will of a Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one that has that thing called human intellect, which gets them in a lot of trouble. As someone said, not Jewish, intellect is a good servant but a bad master, which is an amazing line. It's an amazing line. It was probably in some poem that didn't rhyme. I'm not sure, but it's a great line. Okay. So that raw, that's why it's actually very interesting. There's no raw out there, so to speak. Right? If the disgruntled postal worker goes into a McDonald's and God forbid kills 6 people. When I was a kid, it was always disgruntled postal workers who did these things. Now it's all sorts of people. So the disgruntled postal worker who went into and God forbid killed 6 people. So the fact that those people died, is that evil? No, it's not the proper description of their death. Tragic. It's not evil that they died. What does that mean to be, right? Their death was a result of an evil act. Where did the evil stop? Right there in the guy who did it. What's out there? Something else. Now, what's out there, you and I know, is God's will. Because why were those 6 people, the 6 people sitting in McDonald's at that time, and they happened to be in the way? We don't know, but we certainly, one thing everybody's very religious about, they always blame God for the bad stuff. It's always him, right? God is responsible for people dying. Everybody's religious about people dying. God did it. Living, it's harder to be religious about living because that's already, it's obligatory. You're now obligated to act a certain way, and no one wants that. If I can say God's responsible for all the bad stuff, so I can just not like him and do whatever I want. God's always blamed for the bad stuff. God did the Holocaust. Okay. What about every single event? That was 6 years in the world's history. The world's been around for 5,785 years. What about everything before and everything after? He didn't do that? That's not him? He just showed up for 6 years to decide to kill a bunch of Jews? That's all he ever did? And he destroyed a temple or two, just because, why not? It's all him. The good stuff and the not such good stuff. The not such good stuff is what you and I look at and say, oh, that's bad. Well, okay, but we have to define that more seriously. The goodness in that is completely and totally concealed, and I don't see it, and human intellect will never see it and never understand it. But when Mashiach comes, will we? Probably not then either, but who knows? All right? Maybe we will. Who knows? We might understand how it fits. Why that had to be, who knows? I'm not sure. Maybe we will. But now we can't. There's an amazing letter of the Rebbe where the Rebbe is writing to some Rav to some, I think he's a doctor in New York who had gone through the Holocaust, and it was very difficult for him, obviously. And you don't see his letter, but the Rebbe wrote to him 2 letters on 2 pages, full pages, on how the Eibusher created the world with a purpose in mind, and everything necessary to fulfill that purpose exists in the world. Because if they weren't there, then we couldn't fulfill the purpose. So that's obviously, if he wants a dwelling place in the lower realms, then everything necessary to bring about a dwelling place in the lower realms must exist. Rebbe says that for 2 pages. Then the Rebbe says writes in less than half a page the answer to your question as to why Holocaust does not exist in this world. The answer can't be understood in this world. It's not in this world, that answer. Therefore, the answer to that question is not necessary to bring about the fulfillment of the purpose of creation, because if it were necessary to bring about the fulfillment of the purpose of creation, it would be in the world, because it would have to be. I can't tell you to make a cake and not give you eggs. That's the Rebbe's take on what happened. Then the Rebbe signs it. Then the Rebbe says, Nun Beit, P.S. If this sounds somewhat intellectual and unfeeling, I too lost family. And the Rebbe then lists the family members that he lost in the Holocaust. Don't think that this isn't personal, but there's truth and there's personal reality. Truth is, if we had to know why, we would. We don't have to know why. That's not our job.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I want to understand that. Can you restate that, what the Rebbe said about the Holocaust? Because he was on such a high level of sensitivity, and that's such a incomprehensible event. And it was his generation, and he had all people.
Yes.
So it's not like for us.
Sister-in-law, brother-in-law,
it's not a
brother,
different
grandparents.
generation.
What?
For me, even though I'm older than these guys, but even for them too, it's a different generation. It was born well after it. So what was it that can you please, because I didn't fully understand, can you explain?
Rabbi simply said that the answer to the question why doesn't exist in this world. Therefore, it's not necessary to answer that question in order to do what it is that we have to do in this world. That was the basic answer. That's not our job. That's above our pay grade. Stay out of that. It bothers me. Deal with it. You're an adult. You understand everything? Of course you don't understand everything. You understand why you have it so good in Elam Hazeh? Do you understand why it is that the Eibishter decided that your life in this world should be better than the life of almost every single person who's ever walked on this ball floating in space? Have you ever wondered why? I don't know whether you want to ask that question too much, because God might decide, oh, you don't want it so good? Okay, no problem. I'll stick you in a cave without electricity, without air conditioning in the middle of a desert. No problem. Figure it out. Find some berries. You're a little schwitzy? Boop, 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 boop. Put on more than we need. Right? Rabbi Shem Tov will pay for it. Who cares? Right? Right? Okay. You're a little schwitzy? Okay, it's the 9 days, I understand. But it's, you can still, right? You get home, you're a little schwitzy. We have these rooms. They're the coolest rooms in the world. You walk into the room. First, you do what Nevi'im do. You take off all your clothes. Then you walk into this room, and there's these dials on the wall. And you fiddle around with the dials, and you get the water just the temperature you want. And the water comes out from the wall, and you sit under there singing the gunim and using this stuff under the, and you use your, rosemary, mint, whatever, and you just the only head and shoulders you can find is the mint stuff, and you go like that, and then your beard is like on fire the whole day from this mint stuff that's in the shampoo, and okay, menthol, right, the menthol, right, and you smell like $1 million, and it's amazing, incredible. That's your Elam Hazeh. Your Elam Hazeh is better than King Louis XIV. You ever ask God why? It's not fair. No, won't ask that, huh? Just the bad stuff. The good stuff? Nah, that's me. God's only the bad stuff. That's very convenient, because then I can do whatever I want. When God's only the bad stuff and I'm responsible for the good stuff, so then I can do whatever I want, because there's no right, wrong, up, down. It's all subjective. But once you realize, wait a minute, no, there's really Taka God, and He really created the world, and He really took us out of Egypt, and He really split the Red Sea, and He really gave us the Torah, and all this is all really true. Now I can't do everything I want. Or I can work on myself and get to the point where I want to do all those things that are really supposed to be done, right? Because they're so beautiful and so incredible and so amazing and so uplifting. But I have to sensitize myself to that, and that's exactly what the Rebbe taught us in chapters 1, 2, and 3, right? Do those things necessary to sensitize yourself to godliness, and He'll dwell in you, and you'll live godliness. You'll see godliness in your life. But if all I want is sushi, so then I'm going to get mad at God because He doesn't always let me have sushi. 9 days you can eat sushi, don't worry. No problem. Sushi's fine during the 9 days. If you happen to like burgers, so you're in trouble. Okay. So we're back to the Maamer again. I said we were going to finish it. I guess we're not. All right. Unless I talk in super speed. Right. So what did the hate bring about? It's called Chetz Adas, Eitz Tev V'Ra. It brought about a sensitivity to the existence of something other than revealed godliness. That's called Ra. Right? And that's our existence. That's our experience of existence. Right? Uksiv V'Yedu Ke'erumim. They then knew that they were lacking clothes. That It was unnude in them, not renewed, because renewed usually means it was there and it came back. It was made new. This sensitivity that allows for the mixture of Tov and Ra. And what's the source of that? An experience of self. What is it that I'm experiencing other than godliness? My own existence. Now, where does that come from? We've talked about that over and over in this Maamer. Nefesh Bahamis. Nefesh Bahamis is the source of that experience that you and I have of that person you refer to as I and me. Is that bad? It's not bad. It's an amazing thing. Baruch Hashem. This experiencing existence is incredible. It's like unbelievable. And who gives you that? God gives you this unbelievable experience of existing. Okay, but the experience of existing that you and I have is very much this, and we saw it in the Rebbe's first Maamer, this experience that existence comes from me, that I'm the source of that existence. Now, I know that's not true. I know that intellectually that's not true. God's the source, but I don't feel that. Right? I just wake up in the morning, it's me again. Right? I don't feel godliness surging into me. First thing you say is, leGani, thank you, God, for giving me my life back and having faith in me. Rabbi Emunasecha, every day, the Rebbe tells us every day the essence, we talked about Atzmus, the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? The essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu standing at the foot of your bed, so to speak, listening to you say, leGani. That's the Rebbe told us. All right? Whoa. Okay. Reuven Dunan was a mashpia here. He was also a tractor driver. We've talked about him. He was a mashpia here in Eretz Yisrael, a very, very special Jew. He was tough as nails, though. I mean, he was very tough. So he was a tractor driver. That's what he did. The Rebbe told him to be a tractor driver. He had the yellow hat, and he drove a John Deere tractor. That's what he did all day. But he was a mashpia, taught a tremendous amount of Chassidus. He was makar of more people here in Eretz Yisrael than anybody else in his day. So, but rough as can be on them. I mean, he was crazy rough. He once said that they came up with the snooze buttons on alarm clocks. It's a relatively new invention. In the 1800s, there weren't snooze buttons. Right. So he said, "What's the snooze button?" He says the alarm rings. You look, and you press snooze. No, we all do this. Right? Yes. What's snooze? Snooze means, God, I'm not really interested yet. Another 7 minutes, maybe I'll be interested. What am I not interested in? Conscious reality. I'm still enjoying this state of non-conscious reality very much, and I'd like to go back into it. And the single greatest pleasure in Olam Hazeh, I know they're selling all sorts of other stuff, and I know, but the single greatest pleasure that one can possibly experience in Olam Hazeh, I'm going to say this for Elias, is hearing the rain on the window at 3 a.m, dark winter day in the Pacific Northwest or wherever else you might live. And you wake up and you look at your watch and it says 3:30, which means you can roll over and go back to sleep. Those 3 seconds before you fall asleep are the best that Olam Hazeh has to offer. There is not, and it's better when it's winter and it's raining out, right? You hear the rain on the window, you pull that nice warm blanket. It's only 3 seconds because you're out right away, but oh wow, they're selling all sorts of other stuff, but that's the best. There's nothing better than that. Oh, okay, there you go. Right, the rain on the window in the Pacific Northwest. Right, it's all of you should just do yourself a favor. Go to the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Vancouver, even Everett. Right, you can go wherever you want, and go there like mid-May. In mid-May, it basically stops raining. It's been raining basically steadily for the last 6 months. And when you walk around in the rain, so you walk like this. Right, because you don't want the rain going down, so everybody's walking in the street like this. They've got their coat on and they're all walking like that. They're not upset. They just, you don't want the rain to go down your neck. So you don't walk like that. You walk like that. So there's this enormous crunch as the 5 million people that live in the corridor, probably 6-7 million people from Seattle to Vancouver, they all go immediately, and you hear this as every, their vertebrae all crack as they straighten up for the first time in 6 months. It's an amazing experience. It's really amazing. It's even better than alarms before bombs.
That's why you should get a rain jacket with a hood.
You still walk that way. That's just the way you walk in the rain. You don't walk in the rain like this. Right? You just don't do it. People, when it's sunny out, they walk like this. They want a little sun on their face, right? Rain. Nothing like the rain. But why is it so green and godly? All that rain. So no one complains. You can see God in those trees. You want to know what the color green is? You want to see every shade of green you've ever imagined? Take a drive through a forest in the Pacific Northwest. It's godly. Unbelievable. Ksiv, ki yedu ke arumim hei. Shenischadish b'hem hahergish amurav v'tevra. V'zeu gam kenina levushin. This is what garments are about. Hahergish amurav v'tevra. Ubasharsha, in source, what is it? Hergish hasecha b'midos. My sensitivity to my own intellect and my own midos, which I'm supposed to have. It's not that that's a bad thing, right? I mean, that's why this event happened on the sixth day of creation, to give you and I, the human being that came out of that process called the 6 days of creation. We started with a sensitivity only for godliness, which means we can get back to that, but we ended that process someone who is also aware of other reality. Now, Adam Rishon was a serious Yid, right? Not exactly a Yid, but yes, a Yid, right? And Chava was a pretty serious person. Okay, the two of them were something else. That being said, they were different after lunch than they were before lunch. And they weren't in Gan Eden anymore. They were in the world that you and I know about. If we had stayed in Gan Eden Friday, who says Shabbos would have ever ended? What's Mashiach? Yom Shekula Shabbos. Who says there would have been a Yom Rishon after Yom HaShabbos in Gan Eden? So then, fine, Mashiach would have come. Great. What happened? Nothing happened. God created a world with Mashiach. So what happened? Nothing happened. What was the Eibusher interested in? The Eibusher was interested in you and I making that happen. So then something happened. Right? The whole reason that you and I have the possibility of doing something against the will of God, that creates the reality that when we do something for God, it actually means something. It's real. Because we have the possibility of not doing that. If we don't have the possibility of not doing it, then what difference does it make if we do it? How impressed are you with your breathing? Oh, I breathe well. Now, if you're jogging, you have to think about it, right? Because if you're swimming, you better think about, when to breathe in and when not to breathe in, right? Could never get that straight, though. I just never figured it out. Okay, right? If you breathe at the wrong time, you come up coughing. Okay, but most of the time you are not thinking about breathing. Why? Well, it's just natural. You just breathe. You can't not breathe, right? You can't kill yourself by holding your breath, right? Every kid says, I'm going to hold my breath until I die. Well, you can't. It's impossible. All right? Without some external thing causing you not to breathe. Okay. That's malachim serving God. It's like breathing. It's beautiful, it's incredible, it's amazing, but what's really impressive? You and I serving God. Why? Because we know what sushi tastes like. I mean, I'm not a big sushi fan, but okay, whatever. Someone must be because it's out there. Right? Every kiddush and every shul has to have sushi or else people rebel. Right? Okay. Sushi, milkshakes, tofu, whatever it is. Right?
Sushi and sikha.
What?
Sushi and
I'm sure there's some program on college called sushi and that's a hard one to say. I don't want to say that. Don't say that fast. Sushi in the sukkah. There you go. Pizza in the hut. That's a good one. Okay.
Hookah in the sukkah.
Yo.
You're gonna have to put on 2 flags.
What's the second one though?
American, another American. Just America.
America, baby. Hookah's so American.
What's hookah? Where's hookah?
America, it's not only America, it's the whole Western world, but America, it always starts in America. America represents the notion of a lack of sensitivity to anything real, right? Which is the world that we live in. Real. Right now, it's not only America. The Germans are just as bad, and the Spanish are everybody. But it always comes. Everything good that's happened in the last 100 years has come from America. The car, the plane, everything came from America. This is hard for a Canadian to say, okay? But what can I do? I used to root for the Russian basketball team against the American basketball team when I was a kid, right? Because I mean, you didn't want the Americans to live. You know what it's like living next to like Big Brother, who's 6'8" and you're 1.5 feet tall, like a Canadian sitting there.
Dinner with them.
Okay, so everything good came out of America. Everything. But also all the shtus came out of America. It all came from there, right? All the shtus that's out there now. Where's it always starts? Usually starts in California, but okay. And emanates out. California. Okay. But all the good stuff also. I'm 100%. America's an amazing place. Unbelievable. Unbelievable place. Incredible.
Is it recorded?
Oh, it is. It's an amazing place. The Rebbe refers to America in positive terms all the time. Medina shel Chesed, a country of Chesed, goodness. It's true. Who gives more tzedakah than anybody else in the world? The American government gives unbelievable amounts of tzedakah to the rest of the world. Why are you doing this? There's all these people who don't want them to do it, right? You know that, I don't even want to mention his name, that guy who used to be on Fox, right? And they kicked him off, Baruch Hashem, the anti-Semite worm who crawled out from under a rock and told us who he really is on October 7th. Right, on Simchas Torah. He let it out of the bag. Just an anti-Semite worm. Right, okay. So what's his whole thing? Why should we give tzedakah? Why should you help other people? It's all about me. No, it isn't. Right. To their great credit, the Rebbe refers to America as a Medina shel Chesed all the time. All the time. Right? It's true. It's an amazing place. Incredible experiment. It's as close as you're going to come to what it should be without Mashiach. And in all fairness, where the Rebbe say, why is the American dollar always going to be the source of all currencies in the world as long as we're living the way we're living in Gullus? What does it say in the American dollar? In God we trust. God bless America. Right? 100%. Rebbe used to say that all the time. There was a beautiful, I have one hanging up in my house. On the subway in New York. They made a big poster. Lubavitcher in New York made a big poster, put it on the subway all over. And I got a little one this big, and it's sitting, it's up in my house. It says, it's a picture of a dollar bill, in God we trust. Count on it. It's on the money. Now, on the money means something that's, bull, good, right? The way it's supposed to be. Count on it. It's on the money. In God we trust. That's an amazing thing for a country of non-Jews to decide is going to be the sort of motto of the whole place. Wow, good job, fellows. What language did the founding fathers consider as the language they wanted to be the language of America? Hebrew. Ever see the seal of Columbia University? And Harvard, evidently. I've never seen Harvard's, but I walked. I mean, it's a big problem because you walk all over it. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei in the seal. Evidently also Harvard. In Hebrew, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Which is a problem because there's a seal in the middle of the floor as you walk into the main building of Columbia, and all these heathens are walking over Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. But I mean, what are you going to do?
They meant well.
What? They meant well. Maybe they put a dash in between. What? No, I'm making it up. Daniel, I'm making it up. It's just a good story. I make up all sorts of stuff. I mean,
Yale has the women, says the women coming.
Ah, yeah? I think Harvard, if you look at Harvard seal, I think it also has Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Where did it all come from? They were, universities way back. They were seriously considering Hebrew being the official language. They didn't want English, right? It wasn't exactly the people that they were so fond of. They ended up with English because that's what they all spoke, but they weren't so fond of the English, right? They were the enemy. Right?
Why were they considering Hebrew?
Because they were all religious nutsrim. And so they figured they'll go back to the source. They were all
Not
religious.
Latin,
In
yeah.
God we trust. You know, I mean, the Declaration of Independence. I don't know. I didn't have to memorize it as a Canadian, but I've seen the beginning of it. It starts, one nation under God. But I mean, that's how they talked, right? It's just unbelievable, incredible. Which has a lot to do with the success of the place, right? That they involved God in. The French were busy. God eat. That's why the Rebbe refers to France as the place of the greatest klipa in the world. And the amazing thing is how Yiddishkeit could flourish in France. And Sarfas is Gematria 770.
What? France.
France. Ufaratsta, same letters.
That's crazy.
See, I was there. Parshas Vayeshev, Tavshin Nun Beis. I used to stand in the back of the shul, and there was a pyramid in the back, and I had a place I could stand. I couldn't hear the Rebbe from where I was, but I could see perfectly. And I remember the Rebbe came into the Farbrengen. There's a pyramid at the front of the shul also. Benches stacked up, so people were on like
bleachers.
Bleachers. Right? So those bleachers were full of. Still to this day. In those days it was 50 to 100. Now it's a little more. The French shluchim bring people to 770 for Shabbos. I mean, it's not, past New York is 6 hours and you can get an affordable ticket. There were just groups from France more than anywhere else in the world. Just one after the other, groups from France. Every Shabbos. So there was a whole group on the other side. The Rebbe walked in below us and took a left and walked along the stage and sat down. The first thing the Rebbe did, the Rebbe turned the other way. So we were over there. The Rebbe turned that way and said something. And then we heard l'chayim from the bleachers over there. I have no idea what the Rebbe said. So it turned out, after the Farbrengen, we asked what happened over there. First words the Rebbe said in that Farbrengen, in French, the Rebbe told all the Frenchies to say l'chayim. The Rebbe's French was perfect. The Rebbe lived in France. Right? So the Rebbe said to them, in French, they should all say l'chayim. And then the whole Farbrengen, Parshas Vayeshev Tavshin Nun Beis, 1992, the whole Farbrengen was about the transformation of Tzarfas ad kedei kach that their national anthem became a Chassidish nigun. That was the French national anthem. And the Rebbe elevated it to a state of Kedusha. They changed it. They changed the anthem. Right? The Rebbe talked about that. Shabbos was all France. Tzarfas. Amazing. You can look at it. Parshas Vayeshev, Tavshin Nun Beis. It's an unbelievable Farbrengen. Every sikha was about the same thing. Right? The first words the Rebbe said that Shabbos turned to the French contingent and said in French they should all say l'chaim. All we heard was l'chaim. We heard them saying l'chaim because they're good soldiers. The Rebbe said say l'chaim, so they said l'chaim. I guess we didn't finish the Maamer, huh? Oh well. I tell you what, in place of finishing the Maamer, let's all make a chalata right now that today we're going to finish the Golus. And then we'll worry about the Maamer on, when at the next, we can learn the Maamer before Shachris on Yom Tov Sunday, Tisha B'Av, a big Yom Tov. And we can learn the Maamer before we finish the Maamer. Or we can actually ask the Frierdiker Rebbe to say the end of the Maamer, right? Why you don't have to hear it from me, you'll hear it from him. But let's go a little further and then we'll stop. When I'm aware of my own intellect and my own midas, so that means my own self, again, not in a negative way. It can produce negativity, obviously, but it's just an existential reality that's our experience. And therefore, a Navi, what must he do? Be'esa Nevuah, hayetzarech liyas hafshotas levush. He must throw off the garments. Shuinin hafshotas hahergish to seichel amidas. Throwing off this sensitivity to his own seichel and his own midas. And therefore, if his own seichel is in the way, what's going to happen? And this happens, we all know this, that if I hear information, and I'm very powerfully connected to my own seichel, so rather than hearing what I'm hearing and understanding it and internalizing it, I simply color it with my own understanding, and I end up interpreting it in a completely different and improper way. Very often, as a teacher, some student will tell you something that you said, which you never said. You say, well, I never said that. Oh, no, you did. And then they'll tell you what you said. That's not what I said. I remember once for bringing with a group of girls, and it doesn't matter what the topic was. I talked about a particular topic for 4 hours. Well, I'll tell you the topic. The topic was regarding the disagreement in Lubavitch. There's, different people have different understandings as to how to relate to bringing Mashiach and what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing, etc., etc. Okay, fine. Perfectly reasonable disagreement, as long as it doesn't turn into something called a machlokes. You're allowed to disagree. Ein deoseh and Shabbos is something Chazal say about people, that not everybody thinks about the same things the same way. That's the way people are. Okay. So we're talking about trying to bring about the end of the history of the world. So it's not like trying to figure out how to put sugar in coffee. It's a little more difficult than that. Don't put sugar in coffee. You just wreck it. So I talked about for 4 hours to stay out of the disagreement. Don't judge what other people are doing. Just do what you think is the thing to do that's necessary to bring Mashiach. And if someone else is doing something other than what you're doing or not doing what you think should be done, stay out of it. You want to talk to them about it, you can talk to them about it, but don't judge them as inferior or, either, crazy or not Chassidish or whatever they are. Right? That's not your position. Okay. For 4 hours, I talked about that. The only time I've ever got a call from the person who runs the school that I teach in, whose position on these matters is different than mine. Did you say such and such and such and such to the girls? I said, I spent 4 hours saying exactly the opposite of what you just said. 4 hours. It wasn't that it came up. That's all we verbringed about, from 9 at night until 1 in the morning. The opposite of what you just said. He said, yeah? I said, yes. Oh, okay. Exactly the opposite. I'll tell you exactly what it was. There are people, I'm not saying right, wrong, that is not our discussion. There are people who don't go to what's called the oil. They don't go. Why? Because they don't relate to the Rebbe as being in the oil, they relate to the Rebbe as being in 770. Business as usual. Fine. Right, wrong, crazy, normal, amazing, weird. Who are you to decide? You're going to tell them what their relationship with the Lubavitcher Rebbe is all about? I don't know whether that's your place in life. Okay, fine. So I talked about exactly that. That's not your place. People who go, people who don't go, people who think that's the only place to go, people who think that's the only place you can't go, blah, blah. Stay out of it. You do what you think is right and what you obviously talking about it with your mashpia, etc., but do what don't spend your day judging what someone else is doing because you're deflecting yourself from what's really supposed to be done. For 4 hours. I got a phone call. Did you tell the girls not to go to the Rebbe's gravesite? For 4 hours, saying that's not something anybody can say to anybody. Yes, go, don't go, you must go, you can't go. Who are you to tell me where my Rebbe is for me? Right? Who's them? Who are you? Right? 4 hours. It's the only time he ever called me after a Farbrengen. I'm sure I've said things that he disagrees with more than what I talked about that night. I just read a Farbrengen. They publish the Farbrengens. It's really amazing. They put out a book every year because they write down all the Farbrengens that they have all year long. The ones during the week they tape and then they write them down. The ones on Shabbos, they have a whole group of girls who write it down Mitzvah Shabbos, and then they publish the book of all their Farbrengens that year in Sem. So I get the book. And I like reading other people's Farbrengens because you hear all sorts of stories that you've never heard of before, and it's great. I also like to see mine. What did I talk about? Because I don't remember. Right? So last Farbrengen this year I said some stuff. I'm amazed I didn't get a phone call. But anyway, Baruch Hashem, no phone call. No phone call. Nothing. Right? That day I got a phone call. Because when your seichel's in the way, what'll happen? You'll hear what you want to hear instead of what the person's saying. So the Navi has to move that out of the way. There's no him there, so all he hears is unadulterated godliness. That's Nevuah.
Did they publish that for Brandon?
What, the one where well, that's how I know I said what I said, because I saw it written. I never remember. It's hard to remember what you forbringed about, because it's like you're sitting and talking. It's just it's not like you prepared it. You just whatever comes out.
Is at the seminary?
They give up. They write it they take it home. I always ask for one. There's a book. They put together a book. It's amazing. This year they did what a book. Before every Farbrengen, there was a picture of the person, if they had one. They asked for this at the end. I couldn't figure out why, because I had sent one relative to some other time. They wanted a picture they asked for pictures of you by the Rebbe. Okay, so I sent them a picture because they wanted to do something in the middle of the year. So then they asked me before the book, I said, you have pictures. We want more. I said, we want more. And I said, what do you want more? So then I realized, before every Farbrengen, if they had one, they put a picture of the person Farbrengen by the Rebbe. Wow. So there was the Farbrengen and the picture, then the rest, then the Farbrengen. So I guess they wanted a different picture for each Farbrengen for the people who Farbrengen more than once. They put together a book this year. It's unbelievable. I was just reading it last night, showing it to my son who teaches up in Sems in the north, and showing it to him. The investment they made in that book, it's unbelievable. Incredible. And they give you your Farbrengens at the end of the year when they're doing the book. They give them to you so you can edit them. Say, wait a minute, I didn't say that, or that's not the story. That's not what I said. No, sometimes they get it wrong. Right? Or there are things also you just say, look, don't put that in. I said that in a Farbrengen, but I don't really want it in a book. Right? It's one thing to say what you'll say to your students. It's another thing to have it, written on black and white, and you can't deny it. It's the problem with this. You can never deny saying something. Okay, let's go a little further, so we'll end up with the Rebbe talking and not me, and then we'll pick up. I don't know what the official policy is regarding Chassidus Monday morning, so I can't tell you. Okay, if there's Chassidus Monday morning, we'll finish this Maamer on Monday morning and start a new Maamer. If there isn't Chassidus, then we'll finish this on Tuesday and start a new Maamer. The new Maamer will be the Rebbe's discussion of the Inyan of Simcha as it's relevant to our generation.
Or wouldn't there be Chassidus on Monday?
Sometimes after Tisha B'Av's a pretty rough day, and people have a hard time getting up early in the morning after it's a hard day, Tisha B'Av. You come out of Tisha B'Av pretty wiped out, having not eaten all day, and it's hot. And it was Monday morning. Is there officially Chassidus? Yeah? Okay, there you go. So there'll be Chassidus Monday morning.
Just they're starting over here. The beginner's been in quarter two.
Okay, so that's all right. We'll be out of here in 2 minutes. We're just finishing up. I just want one more picture of my good side. If you could just take my good side. Okay. Let's just see the Rambam and then we'll stop. I'm sorry we're going so late. They had to get rid of their levushim. In a level of bittul, nullification of a keiches v'chushim, their own powers and senses. To be a kli for godliness, they had to get self, had to move out of the way. The Rambam in the first set of halachas in the Rambam's Yad HaChazaka, the first book is called Sefer Amada, the book of knowledge. It's interesting, it's the only one that has a hey in front of Sefer HaMada, right? Which I can't imagine the Rambam had this in mind, but I remember hearing once in a Farbrengen, someone pointed out that Sefer HaMada with a hey, all the others are Sefer Ava, Sefer Kedusha, Sefer Avoida. This is Hamada. It's Gematria Baal Shem Tov. I can't imagine the Rambam had that in mind, but whatever, it was a cute thing to hear in a Farbrengen. The first group of halachas in Sefer Hamada is the laws of the foundation of Torah, and the Rambam begins with Yesodis v'Amud HaChochmas. It is the pillar of pillars, and it's the foundation of foundations and the pillar of pillars to know that there is one God. Right? Yesod HaYesodis v'Amud HaChochmas. Yud Kei Vav Kei. The beginning of the Rambam's Hilchos Yesodei Torah. Chapter 7, 8, 9, 10 deal with Nevuah, prophecy. So in there, at the beginning, the Rambam said, the beginning of prophecy, chapter 7, the Rambam says, Miyasodei Adas, one of the foundations of the religion, lay does to know. And if Rabbi
Thank you.
you like Shakespeare, Rabbi?
No.